Hey everybody, it's Roy from ANS Gear, and we're here to look at and talk about the new Lazarus valve right here. So it's this bad boy right here. So this is a valve replacement for a cocker for a pump, whatever kind of cocker setup that you're running. That runs the larger valve size. So the 11/16 valve. If you have a gun, an older gun, that has the smaller 9/16 valve, this will not work for you. So you need to make sure you're using or you have a body, a more current body that takes the larger valve assembly. Now, when I say the 9/16 and the 11/16, I have an older valve right here, a 9/16 valve. Obviously, you can see that it's smaller and just its overall width is smaller too. So the 9/16, which is just over 1/2 inch, and then obviously the 11/16, which is much bigger, because the lower tube of the cocker body is going to be machined out to accept either the bigger or smaller valve. So first off, you want to make sure that you have a body that can accept the larger valve. So if you're not buying it, just hoping you can throw it in there, because it's not going to work for you. All right. That being said, this valve compared to a different valve, we'll just use this one for comparison's sake right here. Hopefully it doesn't roll away on us. Maybe we can do it this way so it stays in one spot. This valve assembly is completely exposed to everything. Dye has redesigned this and made it a true, like, just almost drop-in piece. The valve itself, completely redesigned. The spring assembly to help close the valve, completely redesigned. The spool that moves in between, the poppet or cup seal, however you want to look at it, completely redesigned. Airflow paths redesigned. Just everything about it is redesigned to really give you a true performance increase. We're talking about cycling pressures can drop, input pressures can drop, get more shots, so your efficiency is going to go better, smoother shots. It's got a myriad of pluses that this is going to give for you. And so we'll do a quick overview of the valve and just talk about some of the main points of it right there. So obviously it's all enclosed. So the spring is inside this back end right here, and it's all trapped inside here. So there's a lot of benefits to that. First off, seeing as though the spring is trapped in there, we don't have any external outside air forces acting on that spring right there. So it's a balanced valve, close to a balanced valve as you can get right there. So it is independent of the overall pressure coming into the gun. It's not going to change how hard it is for that spring to push the valve closed. So it'll do it regardless of what the input pressure is right there, which means you can drop your input pressure and get the same results out of it. Secondly, you can see that this has a secondary O-ring. So typically we've seen, like with a setup like this, right, with our valve here. I'll just move this over here for a second. So we've got in our body, we've got our valve that's going to be like this inside here, right? And then our hammer is going to come forward and strike our valve like that. So we've got pressure coming in, being held in the valve chamber right here on this side of the valve. And when the hammer strikes it, it opens the valve. Air is able to flow through the valve chamber, around the cup seal, into the valve, up through the hole, into the top chamber, and then be pushed out the bolt. Now, when that is done, when that cycle is done, and the gun recocks and this slides back, the spring here is going to help push that forward and close that off. Problem with that is when it's sitting here like this, you've got issues going on. So you've got a valve chamber that's full of pressure right here. So when it tries to open, it's got to overcome the pressure of the spring, or the force of the spring being forward or pushing forward, and the pressure that's inside of here pushing forward as well. If any of you cocker owners have been playing for a while, or pump owners, or whatever it happens to be, you'll notice that as you increase your reg pressure, goes up and up and up. Your velocity can go up and up and up. But you'll get to a point where if you keep increasing reg pressure, your velocity starts to go down, 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 down. That's because the pressure on the backside of the valve right here has gotten so high that when the hammer tries to strike it and open, it can't overcome the pressure and the spring. And so it is only barely able to open the valve a little bit before it comes off the valve, or it is pushed off the valve by the pressure. Therefore, your pressure or your velocity goes down, 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 down. So to get around that, or to get rid of that, I should say, they've separated this area from the pressure being held in the valve chamber. So we've got this sitting inside here now like this. The pressure that's coming up and in is no longer affecting the spring that's trying to push, because that spring is trapped on the backside of this O-ring right here. You see it on there now, and it doesn't let that pressure inside there. So it takes way less pressure to get the valve open, which is super cool. Next thing cool about I'll probably unscrew this thing a million times right here. With this is they've got two other O-rings right here. So this O-ring obviously is going to sit in the front right here. And when the pressure is coming out, it's going to help keep pressure from getting through this way into the lower tube where the hammer sits. So it keeps that pressure, that airflow up and out of the valve assembly. But also this is just an O-ring now. This is a size 11, 90 durometer O-ring, a 01190. So if it ever goes bad, if you ever get a cup seal leak, all you need to do is just change an O-ring. No longer do you have to deal with finding a cup seal that isn't really made too much anymore. It's a special thing, this like nylon Delrin seal or whatever onto this one shaft. It's all one unit. And then when these go bad, you got to replace the whole thing. So now you just replace an O-ring, an 1190 O-ring. Super simple right there. This back O-ring that's on here, this is actually a U-cup O-ring. And these have incredible longevity. They just run forever and ever and ever. So you really shouldn't have to worry about that too much. Another cool thing that they're doing with this valve is if we look inside here, there's a hole in the valve right there. So when the gun is fired, all right, so when we shoot the gun, there's pressure that pushes the ball out, but there's also back pressure that's going to want to come back down, and come inside here. So they're calling this breach sensing technology on there. What it does is that back pressure that comes down and it comes back through the valve and into this area is put into this little hole. This hole is a passage that goes back through the back, and it is allowed to come around into where this spring is. So when this is inside here, that pressure you shoot, this opens, right? Because the hammer comes and strikes it and opens it up like that. Pressure comes backwards through the hole around the back side and slams that shut. So it's a super fast closing valve as well, because it's using that back pressure through the breech to help shut down the valve. Super quick, happens really fast, and that's pretty cool. Another thing that can happen in the old valves is when the valve is opened, like it is right now, right? So the hammer strikes the valve opens. That allows a lot of play that's inside here. So there's only the shaft of the cup seal, or the poppet, or whatever you want to call it, is only being supported by the front side right here. Because this is a really large open hole, there's a lot of play inside there. So if your spring is worn or bent, or is pushing not completely straight ahead, or maybe this is not flat, and so the spring isn't sitting on it flat, it allows this to push at an angle. So it's, instead of pushing straight forward, it can push the rod up or down, have a lot of grinding, a lot of wear on there. So it's another issue that valves can have, these older style valves. So this, the back side is captured inside here, and then the front side is captured inside here. So when this valve is moving back and forth, when it's opening, closing, because it's supported on this side and supported on this side, it always moves in a straight linear path. It can't move up and down. One side can't rotate and the other side drop down. So you're not going to get that grinding or an uneven wear right there. So that's cool as well. You can see the hole right here compared to older style valves, just the size of the flow hole right there. So air is going to be coming straight up and out. We'd have no restriction from airflow coming in. If we look, if you look around here, you think, oh, those holes aren't very big. I don't know how air is going to get through there and then into this section when the valve is opened. But if we look at it from behind, the cross section of holes is really, really big. So there's no obstruction for airflow coming into there. So you're not going to worry about a reduction in airflow or volume because these holes look small. They're not. From the back right here, super big. What else? So the overall hole size right there. So this is just under 1/2 inch wide. So we take a look at what certain ones look like, how small that hole is, an input hole right there, compared to how big that is. Huge, huge difference in flow rate right there, volume, capacity, everything. So again, it just adds to all the benefits right there. And plus, I think the coolest thing about this actually is just having this be an O-ring. It makes so much sense. I like all the other stuff about it too. It's a cool trick little valve setup right here. Really like it. Also has a built-in bumper on the end right there. So when your hammer comes forward and strikes that, it's got a little bit of cushion right there. Make the gun quieter, make it less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less bangy, I guess. I don't know. So metal on metal, there's nothing slamming together inside there to give you a rough feeling shot right there. Because of the way they've incorporated the spring in the back, trapped away from everything else, they were able to lower the usable load on the front. So it's basically a 2-pound reduction in spring tension and still get the same results. So older springs or cocker setups that have really, really heavy springs because you need to drive that hammer so hard because you're overcoming the pressure on the other side, you can really drop spring pressure or spring tension now and get some unbelievable results on there. Because of all this stuff, again, we talked about you can lower LPR pressure because it doesn't take as much to cock a spring that's that heavy back anymore. So the LPR can be lower, input pressures can be lower because you're not trying to overcome pressure on the backside of the valve anymore to get the same velocity. Airflow is huge. So you've got plenty of flow rates. You're not worrying about having to drive a ton of pressure into it to get that flow or that volume as well. It's super cool. The only thing I have to remind you guys is it's for an 11/16 body. So if you have an older style body, like this body right here, this body takes a 9/16 valve. If you don't have that, don't use the valve because you'll have to get it machined to fit the 11/16 valve. But this is awesome. I think there's a lot of cool technology, a lot of cool thought that went into this valve assembly right here. And it's easy to rebuild. It's easy to drop in. Basically, you're just dropping this in and then putting your set screw in, your valve retainer screw right there, and you're done. You don't have to find a spring for your valve. You don't need a valve spring. It's inside there. And then you can just mess around with mainsprings until you find one that really works for you. And definitely go down on your spring pressure. So definitely check this valve out. It's available through the website right now. I think it's a really trick upgrade when it comes to aftermarket cocker accessories. So this is the DFF-20 Lazarus valve. It's available through the website. Order yours now through ansgear.com.